Here we are, another great night at Live Talk with Becky Chernek. And boy, let me tell you guys, do I have a treat for you. I've got Miss Susan O'Rourke with A2Z Sync, and she is the Strategic Development Officer for the company. And I'm just going to let her talk about how she got started with A2Z, everything that there is to know about Susan and also A2Z. But before we go there, I do have a few announcements for everyone. As you know, my upcoming F&I Master Series Forum, the Digital Age, is coming up on April 6th and 7th. And I got to tell you guys, you have got to register for this event because it's going to be absolutely terrific, amazing. I've got some of the best speakers in the industry. And Dan, let me tell you something. I am so excited. First and foremost, just a couple. I'm not going to go through everyone, but I got to tell you, I'm excited about Hudson and Cook. They are the best when it comes to attorneys in our industry and how they're helping us through compliance and just making sure that we're doing things the right way without getting in a whole heck of a lot of trouble. So Patty Covington will be there, as well as good old Eric Johnson. I love him. He's fantastic, fabulous. And I've got some sponsors that will be there. We have 700 credit. Hopefully I don't mess this up. Auto Motto. And I'm looking forward to his presentation. Carrie Wise, she's fantastic, fabulous. I mean, she just has a huge voice in the industry. And then not to mention keynote speaker Brian Kramer. Oh my gosh, talk about a moving forward son of a gun. In fact, I have his F&I manager as well, and she's going to talk about this traditional, from going from traditional to this digital experience. And boy, let me tell you something, it wasn't easy for her. You know, change is tough for people, and she's going to talk to you about all that. And of course, I've got Ted Ings here, Fixed Ops Roundtable, so he's going to present. Joe St. John is back. So I got confirmation that Mr. Joe St. John is back, and he's got some things to talk about as far as where they're going, the reports. Frank McKenna, if you don't know who Frank McKenna is, what is he? Point Predictive, and he is a fraud specialist. And I got to tell you, we're talking about how to protect the dealership assets. So I'm not going to go ahead and go through all the speakers. You have to go to my website at cherneyconsulting.com. All the lineup is there. Speaker lineup is there. And I'm telling you right now, you're going to be floored. Easy to register. I've made it super easy. And so you got to do it April 6th and 7th. And one thing before we get started, I just want to make sure that you know that it's 24/7. So there's no reason why you can't be there, because here's the thing. If you're doing a delivery, whatever's going on at the dealership, because we know how busy it gets, you can still watch it 24/7. So for all attendees. And then a couple other things. Hudson and Cook is also providing $99 towards their spot delivery subscription, which normally goes for $349. Take a look at that, as well as their revised, updated book on F&I, desking and practices. And I'm going to tell you something right now. That is a great revised edition you don't want to miss. And they got a lot of Q&A questions. Dealers, let me tell you right now, they got 25 complimentary books going out to those that are attending that panel. So you got to do that. And then 700 credit, they are providing soft polls. Okay, for 60 days. Free, complimentary. So for dealers that may not be doing soft polls today, you might want to check them out, see what it's all about. And then last but not least, Auto Motto is also providing a 90-day free access to their platform. I'm done with my pitch, but just check it out. And I've got the best here. Susan O'Rourke, thank you so much for being here. Glad you're able to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Becky, for having me. I'm super excited to connect with you. We've been bouncing a ton of ideas off each other and how the industry is changing and how dealers are trying to adapt, but they might not know how to. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm super excited. Like you said, I do strategic development at A2Z Sync. Before that, I got into the crazy car world through ACV auctions. It kind of fell into my lap. I was there from the beginning, early stage employee, kind of saw it all through to when they IPO'd. So a lot of people know them as a disruptor. So I love disruptors in the car industry. So I jumped over to A2Z Sync after my time was done at ACV, because I knew they were connected with the Champ Automotive Organization. And I always had utmost respect for Champ. They were a great organization to work for. They were a great client of mine, and I just loved their brand and how they spoke to the industry. They weren't the typical car dealer. So when I knew that they started A2Z Sync, I joined on, and that was back about a year and a half ago. So not only do I help out with the business development team there, I also do a lot of market research, which has been really exciting to kind of really shed some light on the car buying experience. I don't think we all kind of know that it's not great, but I don't think we know to what extent the customer, how they want to buy the vehicle, and what dealers should be doing to accommodate those. So the Vrooms and the Carvanas, or even the the larger groups that are kind of creating their own programs, don't conquer or take market share from the smaller dealer groups. But yeah, I'll kind of give you a little bit about A2Z Sync. A2Z Sync is a software program that helps dealers transition to a one-person selling model. Now, the one-person selling model is not for everyone. It's kind of scary, but we're kind of here to help dealers with that transition, give them that playbook to make that transition to one person. So not only do we have software that combines all the softwares that dealers are typically using, from a desking tool to an F&I menu to credit applications to e-signing, we have all that in one to kind of accommodate, I call it the bumper rails of the sales process. So they have the software to accommodate that process as well. But not only do we have that, we have our training. The one-person selling model is really a total change in culture at the dealership. We're redefining pretty much every role that you have there, from sales associate to sales manager to finance manager. All those roles kind of change into different variations. So we give you a playbook on what those look like, how you can do that, and we also train the sales associates to be able to handle that deal from A to Z. So it's just not a drop ship widget and run. That doesn't work, as we know, because the online sales adoption really hasn't shown much. So we're just an online tool that helps the in-store process. We're transitioning online to in-store. But the sales associate role completely, like I said, is redefined. So they get numerous hours of training. We say each person gets about 24 hours of training before we even launch the dealership. They get sales training, so they go back to the basics, understand relationship selling, all that. Then they go to F&I training, so they're learning a completely different skill set. And then they learn the software, and then certifications. So the sales associate's certified before they even turn on the dealership, so they have to make sure that they can handle the deal from A to Z. So
Okay,
I kind of threw a lot out there.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
And
So
I'm
apologies.
thinking,
Kinda
first
went
of
on
all,
a
you
tangent.
have a friend out here, Laura Berman. I don't know if she's still here or not, but she said, "Hey, Susan, let's connect. Would like more information." So, yay,
Would love to,
hey,
Laura.
that's a start. That's a start in the right direction. But so as we're getting into this, what I want to talk about is, you mentioned that yes, A to Z is just not for everyone, right? That's what you're thinking or saying. Or so the thing, it's all about reducing the friction of buying a car, the time that it takes, right, to buy the car. And if we can reduce that time and be more efficient in getting in front of that customer, of online to in dealership, how that whole thing works. And making it just easier when it even comes to finalizing the terms with regard to financing. You have found that it has created a better customer experience. Is that right?
Yes. I actually did market research through YouGov, which is it's like the modern Harris scale poll on, different parts of this car buying experience. And one of the biggest pain points was the time at the dealership and the overall experience, just the car buying experience. I ran that same survey at the shop stores, and there was a 50-point swing in satisfaction
Yeah.
based off that model. So from just transparency was one of the questions as well, to the time, to the overall experience was an average of about 45-point swing in satisfaction. So we actually did an A/B test there.
So, okay, so Shop Automotive Group, I mean, they started with A2Z, like, is it, I don't know, how many years ago was it? I mean, is it 5 years ago?
Actually longer. So
Okay.
Trump is one of the more innovative dealers. They became One Price in 1993.
Okay.
And then then they became One Person in 2007.
Okay.
After that, um, after the process, kind of like what I was saying, they were using their F&I tool, their desking tool. They were jumping all over into different softwares. So A2Z Sync was born in 2014, just within the shop walls. We really didn't start scaling until 2019.
Right,
So
right.
it's
Okay.
really relatively new, just to all the other industry partners.
So your dealers, when you're going into some of the dealerships, I'm sure that they're a little bit taken back because they're like, wait a second. I know that I've had some F&I people that are just absolutely freaking out and they're going, wait a minute. We can't have this A to Z. They are going to take F and I, and they're going to my job is going to be resolved. And so they're not really happy with that. Or you have or you have a dealer, the dealer's going, that's a huge profit center for me. I don't know if I really want to have much to do with that whole thing. What do you what do you say there? Because I think that that is a critical component. It's there's a lo and I gotta say it this way, like Brian Kramer, he put a lot of effort into his store from when COVID hit, and I'm sure you probably had a lot of dealers calling you when COVID hit. He made the decision to pull the plug, the trigger then. It was like, "Okay, we're gonna go all in on this." And as and he did, and it was a lot of work, but he accomplished a lot along the way. And now as F&I person, she doesn't wanna do it any other way. So, but where I'm going with this, it's a lot of work. It's not
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah, actually, you bring up a good point about COVID. I think COVID opened up a lot of eyes, just from chip shortage to having to lay people off. The whole industry was kind of at a standstill in a sense, but it opened a lot of eyes to realize that this process is broken and that it needs to be fixed. And I think before COVID, dealers didn't think it was broken. Now I think they're starting to slowly realize that this car buying process isn't the way that customers want to buy cars. So I think CDK actually just did a study recently that 94% of dealers are actually looking to change their sales process in the near future. So it's not so I don't dealers are not necessarily scared of this. The
Okay.
F&I managers definitely are.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to have total buy-in from the whole dealership to do something like this. Like you mentioned with Brian Kramer, you have to go all in. But even if Brian Kramer's all in, he has to have his sales managers, his sales associates, even the finance managers bought in, because the finance managers, we don't just kick them to the curb. We
Okay.
reward
Well, see,
them.
there you go. That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Obviously, they're finance managers for a reason. They produce great numbers. It's a huge profit center for the dealership. They're a very valuable asset to the group. So we typically, depending on the finance manager and their skill set, we typically try to give suggestions on where they could be in the dealership. Now, are they going to make the same amount of money? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they will have a better work-life balance. You never know. So it really depends on really the F&I manager that's in that seat. We've had F&I managers go over to sales managers because in the role that the sales manager role in our system is more of a coach. They're coaching the sales associates on how to make a menu. That's right up their alley. Or they transition over to a trainer at the dealership. Trainers, you'll be surprised how many dealers don't have trainers. They say they have a sales process, but I would say 85% of them adhere to it. 15% of them adhere to it. So a trainer is a great role at the dealership that's kind of overlooked. I have been seeing some bigger groups with titles like process coordinator or process, something with the process in there, so they could transition over to that type of role. Or we have another different type of role that is specific to Champ, but we also have proposed it to other dealers, like the processing department. So the processing department, heading that up, is basically where they just submit deals. The finance department kind of transitions to that, but it's usually hourly people that submit those deals, and then they have a director that oversees that, and that looks maybe at some deals that might have hair on it. So they might be able to transition to that role. So there's a couple different options for them, and they're not working from 8 to 11 p.m. at night.
So
Like
what
I
do
said.
you say to those F&I people? And maybe not so much dealers, okay, or maybe it's GMs or GSMs or, when they think that this whole thing, allowing a single point sales associate to finalize the transaction via a menu, that we're leaving money on the table. There is no way. Hey, I had, and I keep talking about this, but it's so true. I had a conversation, well, not conversation even. I was invited on a radio show and with a dealer advocate along with, I don't know, maybe an insurance trainer of some sort. And I'm trying not to share names here, but I think it was a setup call. And so the question came in, you do you endorse training salespeople to endorse product sales or to have an understanding and train up on product sales? So
Yeah.
you know me. What do you think I said? Of course. Like, why wouldn't you? I mean,
Yeah.
I was brought up that way. I mean, the more power, the more information, the more power you have, right? The last thing we
Mm-hmm.
want to do is have the customer say to the sales associate, "Oh, by the way, should I get that service contract?" And he's like, "Heck no. What are you talking about?" Because they don't want to say anything. They don't want to do anything that they don't know have the proper information. So if I
Mm-hmm.
was the salesperson, I'd say, "You got a 3-year, 36,000-mile comprehensive coverage. What do you need a service contract for?" Right?
Yeah.
So they were like, "Well, the more information that you provide the sales associate, the more they'll give up the farm."
Hmm.
And I'm
Interesting.
like, "Okay." So I got hammered. But they hammered me. So let's just put it that way. And it was like, "Are you kidding?" And so there's a lot of talk in the industry too about making sure that the customer has some information earlier on when they're shopping online about the
Mm-hmm.
products and how important that is, because we're educating the customer earlier on so that way they can make a decision when they get into the store about the products again. How does that work? What's the workflow like for you on that piece?
Yeah, so you bring up a couple good points.
Oh, good.
With yeah, no, with the sales associate has all that knowledge. So, but that also makes them know the customer a lot better. The F&I manager only has 10 to 15 minutes to build that relationship. That sales associate has been with that client for the last 2 hours talking about their kids going up to the mountains. They know they need tire and wheel in Colorado or windshield protection if they're going up there. So they're able to plant those seeds throughout the journey as well. So that exposure that you're speaking of is something that we train when we train in our F&I classes that we offer. So basically, they're planting those seeds throughout the process, and they're able to kind of build that relationship where we have customers asking our sales associates, hey, what should I buy? When was the last time you heard that?
Yeah, right.
Now, how much more money can I spend? So we've actually had dealers, walk through the showroom and hear that from their customers, and they have to turn their heads because they're like, what? Because that also goes to the transparency aspect as well. You talk about that they're going to give up the farm, but that's kind of why people don't like dealerships, is that the transparency level is, not there. They don't understand what's going on behind the scenes. So they don't want to buy that extra product, or they don't want to sit at the dealership for another hour to have their negotiate price again. So that's kind of the transparency aspect that we also provide, because you're sitting there with one person, and our software too provides that transparency right on the screen. You're able to show them payments, you're able to show them the menu. It's interactive, and it's an interactive process. We want the customers to be involved so in their car buying experience. And typically we see, the profits on that side go up. Like, we rarely ever see F&I dip when people transition to this model. And there's a couple different factors for that, from training to how we repurpose the sales associate as well.
Well, we have a few people that came on. I don't know if they're still with us, but Don Brady's on. He said, hey, and he's always dealing with, remote deliveries. I mean, look at him.
Oh,
That's what
yep.
he does for his business, right? And then, of course, Larry, he's my dear friend. He's on. Good to see you, Larry. He's always trying to figure out what's the new thing in town, right? He has a lot of access to a lot of different agents all over the country. And so this is a viable This is a viable conversation. I, recently had Gina talking from Colonnade. Am I saying that right? Colonnade Advisors, and she's amazing. She's quick on the draw, just like you, and she's talking about these mergers and acquisitions. And I'm going to tell everybody, from what I'm understanding, I'm understanding that these large automotive groups, well, they're not messing around, and they really truly understand this digital journey. And so from online to in-house, I mean, however which way the customer wants to buy a car. So I don't necessarily think that if a customer wants to buy online, they buy online. If a customer wants to come into the dealership, and most do because they still enjoy the brick and mortar experience, the atmosphere. But I think, as you mentioned, Susan, is the fact that they just don't want to spend all day in a dealership buying a car. They'd rather not be in that environment. Now, what's I'm seeing hard to change or hard to it's just many dealers still today, they get the online thing. They're kind of getting through that piece. It's starting to kind of jive. But when that customer gets into the dealership, it's all bets are off.
Wild
I mean,
West.
I don't know if that's what you're experiencing, but that's pretty much what's going on. I mean, it's like, we're just,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, why did you put this customer through this online experience if they got to start the process all over again? I don't understand that thinking.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up another great point.
There I
But
go again.
online sales is an interesting concept. The bigger groups like Lithia with their driveway program, they're really stepping into that market. However, I think market research shows that only 9% of sales were completely done online last year.
Yeah.
That's a low number. And that's probably I would say probably 90% of that's Carvana and Vroom. So most people are still coming into the dealership to have that car buying experience. And I've heard someone call car buying a necessary evil, which is awful. They need a car, they have to go and buy the car, and they plan on spending a day at the dealership. And that shouldn't be the case, but we're really preconditioned to how that's the experience. So that's really what we're trying to eliminate is, that necessary evil. We want it to be a fun experience for the customer. And most of the customers know what they're buying. They're coming in on a vehicle. They've done all the online research. They might want to shop around a little bit, but most of them know where they're going to buy their vehicle. They're going to go to this dealership and check out these cars. So really connecting that online experience in store is critical at this point, because that's where you're really going to get the customer. If they're online and they're using all these tools and they find what they want to do, and then they come into the store and the price is either the car's gone or the price is $100 off,
Mhm.
they're not going to go back to that dealership. I kind of had that experience recently when I was buying my car. I had an appointment and they messed it up, and someone else was on the test drive, and I was on my lunch break, and I was like, you know what? This just made me mad. I'm leaving. I'm not going to go. And it was the car I wanted too, but it was just principle behind it. So I was like, so creating that experience when you come into the dealership is really important, I think, because it could be just like how that happened. I wonder how many times a day that happens at this dealership in Denver, where there's just a miscommunication, or they don't understand that I'm here to purchase a vehicle, and this is the process I want to take. I don't want to sit down and wait for someone to come over and then go back and forth and wait 3 hours. But the online, I don't think is fully there yet either. I think a lot of dealers were looking in the wrong places when COVID came. So, hey, let's put this digital retailing tool on my website, and I'm going to get all these online sales. And sadly enough, it was more just a lead gen, which is great, but it didn't really help the process, because most people still wanted to come into the store and buy the car. So
Mhm.
they have this great experience online. They're able to have this transparency, they think, with their payments and their credit scores and everything, and playing around with that. And then they get into the store, like you said, and blah, it's different. So that's where I think A2Z differentiates itself too from all the kind of players in the space. Is we were created as an in-store tool first. We knew that process was broken, and we built it from the inside out. So the in-store tool was built, and then the training also that we provide, you have to have people to understand what the tool actually does. So I think like all these widgets and these digital retailing tools are great concepts, and there's some great companies out there that have great products, but I just don't think, I think it's the sales process that is really what dealers need to focus on, not getting the online sales and advertising and all that, putting all that money into that. Because if you have a great brand, a great experience, people will come. You see it at the shop organization. They have one person, one price, 1 hour. People know that. All around the city, people will drive from miles and miles away just to go to shop. And it was even proven when they took the Subaru store over in Denver, that the average mileage per customer went up.
Wow.
And the credit score went up. In that area of where the dealership is, it's a little bit lower income area, and the credit score went up, I think, by like 50 or 60 points, just because it was attracting different people from different areas because of the brand. And another group that does that as well is Motorworks. They have their one and only promise, which is cool as well. So you can get really clever with the one person, one price type model in branding. And customers, when I tell people what I do, because most people don't know what I do, I explain, And when you go buy a car, you deal with one person. You're pretty much in and out of there within a couple hours, and you don't have to negotiate. And they're like, "Oh, that sounds awesome." Every time I say that, so it's just funny because I think we have goggles, blinders on when we're looking at this, because we just have to really see outside to the customer and see what they're really thinking. And that's something I've been working on with Chip, my CEO, with the market research, and it's pretty eye-opening with what the customers are looking for. So.
Well, I think so. I mean, I get that. And again, I see it from both sides. So, like, for example, hey, Christine Farnan's here tonight. Good to see you, Christine. Thanks for coming in and saying hi. And so Christine, she's in dealerships all over New York, Albany, New York. That's where she's from.
Buffalo.
And
welcome,
I'm going to
Christine.
tell you, some of these guys are just slow to change. I mean, they're just not seeing it. So I think what happens, it's interesting because the dynamic. So like on LinkedIn, sometimes it's like they seem to embrace it more. They seem more of a higher level type of, well, it certainly does make sense to connect the disconnect. Stephen Apicella, normally he jumps in somewhere along the line. I don't know where he is tonight. Everyone must be at a football game or something. I don't know if there's even, anyway, so they're somewhere. But at the end of the day, we have customers who have like slow pay subprime credit. And sometimes they just don't fall in that mold of prime, where it's a lot easier. I mean, let's face it. So I did like I did a review of FICO score, if you will, and I see a higher percentage of FICO score in your area. I see a higher FICO score actually with the Walzer Automotive Group, who they also are on that single point sales associate. And I'm like, okay, so years back, being the host of the F&I Today show, I had Walzer on. I had, I think, is it Carol from Champ was on at one time in the F&I Today. So
yeah.
it was just, so I questioned, and I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot here, but I'm sure that this is questions that some of our dealers have. Well, I have a lot more customers who have some slow pay history. They're just not going to fall into this mold. I have GMs that I talked to in the past that are like, well, Becky, here's the deal. I'm not sure if I'm going to even allow the customer to process through this entire transaction to a final approval, because there's some other things that likely we can do on deal structure to really make a difference and get a better approval. I'd much rather get it going, get it started, get a better understanding of what we have to work with. But let's get the customer into the dealership at this point and figure out where we're at as far as deal structure, finding out, is there a better way to go before we allow the customer to go through the entire digital journey.
Sure.
So there's some facts and considerations. Now, I know where you're at, the Champ Automotive Group does not probably have a lot of subprime customers. And so that really doesn't, there's probably not too much you have to be so concerned about. But I think in other stores, there's probably that conversation. What are you saying about that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because with the subprime customer, it is a completely different customer, because a lot of dealers might say, hey, my advisor might not be able to handle that deal. Well, one thing that we train, and you'd be surprised what the sales associate actually can do, is we have a wants and needs analysis that we train. So really understanding the customer. We have some things in the software that, hey, estimate your credit score before they even talk about pricing. Hey, what's your credit score? What are you from a 1 to 5 range? We do all those those little training things to kind of pull it out of the customer to see where they're at in the process. So
Mhm.
let's say they have a terrible credit score, 500, and they're looking at a $50,000 car. Sometimes we'll train the client advisor to be like, okay, let's back up here. Let's pull your credit, which is in our system. Let's see where you stand. We'll kind of get the sales manager involved, and the sales manager is there to really coach. So like, we're not saying that they're completely tapped out of the deal. We're just not having that back and forth with the manager running back to get pricing. They might be able to bring in that manager that has a little bit of more difficulty with financing and talk, hey, what should I do here? Do we have anything for them? Let's really try to find out what their buyer motivations are. And so all that is trained in our sales process, which
Mhm.
is an 8-hour course that we offer. And then, the sales manager has, that knowledge to coach them. Hey, this is what you're going to say to them. And when they have that TO, so we train TOs after the test drive, when they get back from the test drive. So it's not clunky, hey, let me go run to my manager, like, hey, let me go grab a plate, or let me go drop my plate off. And then they have those conversations where, I don't think they will be able to qualify for this. What do you think? Here, let me tell you how to do this, instead of the sales manager jumping into every deal. So it's more of a coaching aspect, and we really pride ourselves on that philosophy throughout the sales process, because that way the sales manager can coach more people and get more deals through the pipeline, instead of holding their, I have to wait for my sales manager now because he's working a deal. But we have the Shop organization has a couple dealerships in some subprime areas, lower income, and they do this just fine, and it's more of like the coaching, talking, and they also know their clientele. So
Yeah.
each dealer, like you said, each dealership's a little different. So when we go into the dealer and they're like, all our customers are subprime or something crazy like that, or the majority of them are, like, well, how do we'll work with them on how, specific word tracks and talk tracks and things like that, to make sure that the sales associate is comfortable in setting up that deal. And that's really why I think we're so successful, is because we're customizable. We're giving the dealership a playbook to execute this process. We're just not saying, here, say this, say that. We really work with the dealer to customize a playbook that works for them.
Christine, I don't know if you can hear me, see me, but I'm talking to you. Hi, Becky. It's Christine. So she's coming in on Facebook and LinkedIn. Hopefully, we're not having some difficulty here. But thank you, Christine, for being here. Appreciate it. So I hope everyone can make some comments here, because I think that this is a really good conversation, and certainly a relevant conversation as to what's going on in this industry today. And you need to go ahead and kind of ask the questions, because believe it or not, this gal Susan, now she looks young and she is young, but this gal's smart. She really knows her stuff. So don't let that innocent thing over here
You're
I think some
fine.
of these guys are probably thinking, what does she know? She's not been in our industry. She's not been in the trenches. So what are you even doing here, Becky? And
Yeah.
does she really even know what we go through, and, all our, what's going on in F&I, and what we do for a dealer, and how we go ahead and put deals together and really make it all come together. And there is a lot of talent when it comes to, I'm going to speak on the F&I, for the F&I person. There is a lot that's happening in that role, in that there should be engagement with the customer earlier rather than later, at the salesperson's desk, because I'm going to tell you, I'm going to beat my head up against the wall a million times and talk about, get out there, get engaged, make sure you understand where the customer is coming from, build that rapport, and then just fact find, right? So that way, when you're presenting your menu, that you're able to build a value proposition when it comes to all the products that you are presenting to your customer, that it matters to them. But there is a lot to be said about the talent, the heartbeat of that department, and that they are doing. I mean, you've got a lot of work cut out for you. I
Mhm.
just, we had that conversation too. I mean, we have a desk managers, and these guys are flipping deals into the F&I office. They're not clean. They're not. I mean, to tell you, you wonder how they put the deal together. It's like, what were you thinking? I mean, there's no rhyme. There's no reason. I've had some of these desk managers actually submit a deal with no income. I'm like, who does that?
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be said about that too, and how the F&I person is getting involved and making sure that, you know, um, hey, we're putting these deals together. We are making sure that we validate this income, that we take a deal from the desk that literally has, I mean, little to no profit. And F&I is putting that deal together to um, find a better way to get the deal approved. And
Mhm.
then not only that, but taking that advantage and upselling the additional products in F&I. How is a single point sales associate, but how are they going to do that? Now, what I want to do, Steven says here, and I don't know whether, oops, if he's still with us or not. I thought I did that. Yeah, I did. Okay. I'm in the DFW area. And depending on what area is, we approach customers differently. Now,
Mhm.
I think, okay, I kind of get that idea, but so I just wanted to comment on Steven's on his feedback. But that F&A person is the one who's really kind of putting this deal together.
Mhm.
And so now you're saying, okay, we're going to repurpose the role. What about the desk manager? What are you going to do with them? Because, frankly, let me tell you something from my perspective, that we need some help there.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
what are
true.
you seeing?
Yeah, so that's a role that is vital to this whole process. But a lot of those sales managers or desk managers are put in that role just because they sold the most cars, maybe, and they're kind of
Yeah.
thrown in there without any direction. And we see that a lot because we work with all different types of dealerships. But one of the things we offer is actually a leadership class with the managers, general managers, even sometimes the service managers come in because it's such a good leadership class. And we just give them the tools to be a leader and understand maybe one on ones or understanding how they coach instead of jumping into the deals because they're typically jumping into deals and closing them instead of coaching. So but yeah, we offer a leadership training class that really helps empower the sales manager to help the client advisors in their role for sure.
Hmm. Well, I'm on my phone right now, and for some reason, some people are they're not able to connect via LinkedIn.
Oh,
And
okay. Oh no.
that's where so Stephen Apicella he just sent me um, this. Here he
Oh,
is.
he just got
Look
in.
at look who just popped in here. Okay, I'm like, whew.
I think it
So
was a
we
little
might
bit of
have
a
to.
delay. I because I got a message as well. But another thing too about that F&I manager role you were saying is that they're putting these deals together and they're doing a lot. And that's the thing, they are doing a lot. And because they're taking deals, two finance managers are handling what 10 sales associate deals. So they're overwhelmed. When the sales associate is able to handle the deal themselves, they're not having that pressure of, just pacing the deal. They actually have to sit down and go through the process. So that's another thing too that you mentioned is that they have a big role because they're handling 10 different people's deals. The sales associate's handling one person's deal, in a sense. So that's another point I just wanted to bring up as well.
No, that's a good point. I'm going to hear
Mhm.
what. Let's.
Oh,
I'm going to let you read Stephen's comment.
sure. When customers overwhelming Overwhelmingly don't like the car buying process, and many customers don't return to their selling dealership thereafter. We need to address all parts of the dealer customer journey before, during, and after the sale. No one portion is more or less important. We just can't expect customers will show up, and we can't simply hope they'll return naturally. We need to earn it in every moment by making the total dealer customer journey together feel more connected. Why buy here and why, I think he got cut off.
Yeah, I've lost it. Yeah,
Why
there's too
return
much.
maybe?
Yeah.
But yeah,
And yeah, I mean, that's where he is, Steven's all about is reoccurring customers and how to, it's not that one moment, that one, he calls it a micro moment in the menu presentation or pre-sale. A pre-sale is a good idea. I like the idea of pre-sale. I really do, of getting more information out to the customer, because sometimes during the presentation, now, I don't know. I mean, they may push back. There are customers that could push back. It's too much
Mhm,
information coming at me all at one time, so I can't really make a valid decision. I'm just going to wait. Like that happens. It's like they
mhm,
freeze. And so if we're not back in front of that customer after the fact, then what happens? And well, somebody else will sell them a service contract. Somebody else will sell them a tire and wheel. Somebody else, I had a really good conversation with another group, and frankly, they mentioned, you know what, we could probably do a lot better job. Well, we can do a better job with it. Let's just put it that way.
mhm,
And I bet that there's a lot of dealer groups out there that can certainly continue do a better job when it comes to after sale opportunity as well.
mhm, mhm.
But I just think, we talked about this thing. It was kind of funny, but 20 years ago when I was maybe attending an F&I management technology conference, and I was speaking on e-contracting, and I got to tell you, probably didn't do the best job ever, but anyway, but I said, okay, it's a great concept, but don't expect it to, I mean, when do you suppose this is going to happen in the next couple of years? Probably not. 5, 6, 10 years, maybe. We're just getting into e-contracting.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a slow it's going to be a slow crawl to a walk to a run. Definitely in the next 5 years, I think dealers are becoming more educated on it. We've been seeing a lot more people wanting to learn more, looking to find options on how they can, eliminate those friction points. So I think now that the concept's out there, people are going to be doing more research, but it is relatively still new. That's why right now, I before I said it's not for everyone, and some dealers are kind of scared to jump right in. Some dealers are willing to dip their toe in the water though, and kind of see how it works at maybe a store or maybe with a team. So I think that's a really great approach if dealers are wanting to test out this idea instead of just jumping all in. We love it that they jump all in. That's the best way. Rip the band-aid off and kind of get moving. But we understand that this is a very new concept in the industry and people are just starting to learn about it.
So here's the situation. I don't know how you
Mhm.
feel about this, but on LinkedIn, for some reason, we are not showing up on video.
Oh
So
no.
what I'm thinking about doing, because I just feel like this is a great conversation, and I'm just wondering whether or not we should step out of this one and try to come back on again. And would you mind doing that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and we're going to end this and come back on with no video. First, we're just going to knock it out of the park. So let's just do that. And I just want to give you, I'm not sure what's going on, and just technology is just like anything else. Stuff does
Yep.
happen. So I just want to make sure that people are getting the best. And Brian Hudson said, yes, great
Oh yes,
idea.
yes.
Okay, all right, let's do it. Let's make it
Yay.
happen. I'm going to end this and let's get on out of here, and then we'll do it again. Thanks.
Cool.
Thanks, Susan. All
No
right.
problem.
I'll take you back. I'll meet you back in the studio.
Okay.